The Karzun Armada was not just fear, it was a living legend. For thousands of cycles, the alien empire had moved through the galaxy with deadly precision. Every civilization that had dared stand against them was gone in hours. Planets erased, fleets shattered, leaders vanished. The galaxy whispered their name with trembling awe, calling them the Unstoppable. On the bridge of the flagship Drolith, Commander Varkin observed the endless stars stretch before him. He had faced countless foes, yet none had ever surprised him. That was the problem. The galaxy had nothing left to teach him. Every encounter was the same. The enemy fought, the enemy fell. Always. "Commander," said a young officer, eyes wide behind his visor. "We are detecting a ship drifting in the Zyrian trade corridor. Identification unknown. Minimal power readings." Varkin leaned forward, eyes narrowing. He didn't feel the rush of excitement that most commanders might have felt when spotting something unusual. Curiosity was a weakness. "Minimal power," he repeated. "Bring it up on the holoscreen." A small blip appeared. The vessel was tiny, barely noticeable against the backdrop of stars. Its hull was scratched, patched in places, a vessel that would have been considered antique by Karzun standards. "It's insignificant," Varkin said. "No threat. Continue our path. We cannot waste time on debris." The officer hesitated. "Commander, it is powered and moving." "It is responding." Varkin's antennae twitched. "Responding? Yes, it is sending a message." Varkin's mandibles clicked softly, a sign of amusement. "Let me hear it." The message was short, polite, almost curious. "Greetings. We are a human vessel passing through your territory. Request communication." Varkin stared. Humans. He had read about them in historical records, a young, primitive species known for reckless courage and stubbornness. Never a threat to the Armada. Never. He turned to his officers. "Comply, open a channel, but nothing aggressive. They must not feel threatened." The small screen shimmered as the human captain appeared. Varkin studied the figure carefully. Unlike the Karzun, who were tall, armored, and angular, the human was small, unarmored, and almost fragile-looking. His eyes were calm, unwavering. "Commander Varkin of the Karzun Armada," the human said. His voice was calm, almost polite. "I am Captain Elias Grant of the starship Endurance. I do not wish to fight. I come only to pass through. Perhaps we may speak." Varkin let out a dry, clicking laugh. "You call this speaking?" He leaned back in his command chair. "Do you know who you are speaking to, human?" "I do," said Grant, unshaken. "I have studied the history of your fleet. I know the stories. I know the power you hold. But I also know there is a way to survive without war." Varkin's mandibles twitched in confusion. A tiny human, unarmed, suggesting survival in the presence of the most fearsome fleet in the galaxy. He almost laughed again, but he restrained himself. The young officer beside him whispered, "Commander, perhaps we should destroy it before it surprises us." Varkin waved him off. "It is a toy, nothing more. We will observe." The Endurance did not flee. Most ships would have done so or powered down to avoid detection. But this human vessel stayed, drifting in the trade corridor, almost as if it were daring the Armada to act. Hours passed. The Karzun Armada continued its patrol, scanning countless sectors, when systems began to misbehave. Navigation grids showed minor errors. Sensor readings flickered. Communications loops repeated unintelligibly. "What is happening?" Varkin demanded. His usual calm began to crack. "Commander, systems are affected, localized interference," said the officer, voice tight. "It seems to originate from the human ship." Varkin's antennae twitched sharply. He leaned forward, scanning the blip on the holoscreen. Impossible. A single, tiny human vessel interfering with our systems. Preposterous. And yet it was true. The Endurance moved with an elegance that defied Karzun expectations. It slipped through gaps in asteroid fields, used microgravity pockets, and even the magnetic pull of nearby stars to adjust its trajectory. Every maneuver was precise, creative, and utterly unpredictable. Varkin felt something he had never felt before: uncertainty. A strange, unsettling weight in his chest. He had fought hundreds of species, yet never one who acted in ways he could not anticipate. "Prepare the fleet," he ordered, trying to steady his voice. "We will see what this human intends, but be ready to engage if necessary." The Endurance sent another message. This time it was short. "We do not fight like you, we fight differently." Varkin studied the human. His expression was unreadable. "Different how?" he asked aloud, though he knew it was rhetorical. The human did not answer immediately. Instead, the Endurance moved. It positioned itself closer to the flagship, not aggressively, not threateningly, simply closer. Varkin felt a flicker of irritation. "Advance our drones," he ordered. "Scan it in every way. I want to understand this." The drones launched, swarming around the human vessel, analyzing every inch. Hull integrity, propulsion systems, weapon systems, everything was normal. Weak, even. Nothing that could challenge the Armada. And yet, as they tried to interact with the human ship, the drones began to malfunction. Communication signals were scrambled. Propulsion circuits sparked unpredictably. Even the AI controlling the drones could not stabilize them. Varkin banged his clawed hand against the console. "What is this sorcery?" "Not sorcery, Commander," said the young officer quietly. "It is strategy, intelligence, planning. It is human." Varkin turned sharply. "Human? Yes, they do not attack directly. They confuse. They adapt. They survive." He leaned back, his mind racing. For the first time in centuries, he felt the weight of doubt. The Karzun were unstoppable until now. The human ship continued to drift calmly, almost lazily, around the edge of the Armada's formation. And then, without warning, it disappeared from all sensors for a moment. A single second, but enough to unsettle the Karzun. Varkin leaned forward, his voice low. "This is impossible. How does a ship vanish? It should not be able to." The officer shook his head. "I do not know, Commander. It is different, intelligent, unpredictable." Varkin stared at the holoscreen, at the tiny human vessel that dared to exist in the path of the most powerful fleet in the galaxy. A chill ran through him, though he would never admit it. "Prepare the fleet for inspection," he ordered. "But proceed with caution. This human is unlike any enemy we have faced, and I do not know if it can be defeated the way we usually defeat them." The Endurance reappeared in full view, unscathed, unafraid, and calm. Captain Elias Grant's message came once more. "We do not wish to fight, Commander Varkin, but we will survive. If you wish to understand why, observe closely." Varkin clenched his claws around the armrest. This human, this fragile creature, was already changing the way he thought about war, about power, and about victory itself. And the worst part, he did not yet know what the human would do next. The Karzun Armada, undefeated for millennia, had encountered something they could not predict, something they could not control, something that, for the first time, made them truly uneasy. And the human ship. It simply drifted, calmly, watching, waiting, daring the Armada to discover a truth they had never imagined. There is a force in the galaxy that cannot be measured by strength alone. Varkin looked at his officers. "Stand by," he said quietly. "We may have met the one enemy we cannot crush, yet." And somewhere across the stars, the human ship continued on its path, tiny but unyielding. A single vessel daring to show the galaxy that strength alone does not decide who survives. The Endurance floated calmly in the Zyrian trade corridor, appearing almost fragile next to the massive Karzun Armada. Yet for Captain Elias Grant, every moment was calculated. He studied the fleet on his monitors, noting the patterns of movement, the timing of shifts in formation, and the points where the alien sensors overlapped. "Sensors indicate increased activity," said Lieutenant Myra Singh, his communications officer. "They are scanning us more aggressively." Grant nodded. "Good, let them try. The more they probe, the more they reveal themselves. Every action they take gives us information." The human vessel, though small, had a remarkable advantage: unpredictability. Every alien fleet in the galaxy relied on discipline, pattern recognition, and rigid doctrine. Humans were none of those things. They could improvise. They could adapt. And in this moment, those traits would turn the tables. On the flagship Drolith, Commander Varkin paced his bridge. The human vessel had already disrupted multiple sensor arrays. Several smaller Karzun ships had been temporarily disabled, not destroyed, but trapped in confusion fields they could not escape. "This is new," Varkin said quietly. "Their ship, it is simple, weak, but it moves with intention. Every maneuver is unexpected." "Yes, Commander," said the young officer. "We cannot predict their next move, and our weapons systems are partially jammed." Varkin's antennae twitched sharply. He could feel the doubt spreading among his crew. For the first time in countless centuries, they were facing something they could not control. Back on the Endurance, Grant watched a formation of alien fighters advance toward them. Their weapons glowed, charged, ready to fire. Yet he did not panic. "Prepare defensive protocols," he said calmly. "Myra, initiate evasive patterns. No sudden maneuvers. Let's make them think they have the advantage." The fighters charged, their targeting systems locking in. Then, with a subtle shift in gravity, the Endurance glided effortlessly through a field of asteroids. The alien weapons fired blindly, striking nothing but empty space. The first of the Karzun drones went down. Not destroyed, but temporarily disabled, tangled in debris, spinning helplessly. "Captain," Myra said, her voice excited, "they can't predict this. Their systems keep recalibrating. We're confusing them." Grant smiled. "Good. Confusion is a weapon humans have used for centuries. The enemy cannot fight what it cannot anticipate." In the Drolith, alarms sounded as more ships were affected. Varkin's mandibles clicked in frustration. "Concentrate fire," he barked. "Target and destroy." Yet every attack failed. The human ship moved with a grace that seemed impossible. It was not fast. By Karzun standards, it was slow. But it used every celestial body, every microgravity fluctuation, and every gap in the asteroid field to evade capture. And then came the moment that would change the Armada forever. The Endurance released a small probe, almost invisible, but it carried a specialized device. It didn't explode. It didn't fire energy. Instead, it emitted subtle pulses that interfered with the Karzun communications grid. Within minutes, coordination among the fleet began to break down. Ships collided slightly, formations wavered, and small pockets of drones spun aimlessly in confusion. "Commander Varkin," the young officer stammered, "their ship, it's doing something to our fleet. We cannot maintain formation." Varkin's antennae twitched violently. "Impossible," he hissed. "A single ship affecting the Armada." "Yes," the officer said. "They are thinking differently, adapting." Meanwhile, Grant monitored the effects calmly. "They'll try to strike next," he said. "We'll be ready." And strike they did. A wave of Karzun fighters accelerated toward the Endurance, their weapons glowing. But this time, the humans were ready. Using the gravitational pull of a nearby asteroid belt, Grant guided the Endurance through a series of precise maneuvers. The alien fighters overshot every attack, their lasers firing into empty voids. Some collided with asteroids. Others were caught in gravitational eddies and disabled temporarily. On the Drolith, Varkin's fury boiled. "Form defensive rings. Surround the human ship. Destroy it." But his orders arrived too late. The human vessel, anticipating the move, had already shifted into an unexpected vector, gliding around the Armada in a way that made their weapons useless. For the first time in history, a Karzun fleet could not strike its target. "This is unprecedented," Varkin hissed. "We are outmaneuvered." On the Endurance, Grant allowed himself a small smile. "Humans survive by thinking differently," he said. "We do not rely on brute force. We rely on adaptation. And we protect what matters: ourselves, our crew, our people." The Karzun observed, bewildered. Every attack they launched failed. Every tactical maneuver backfired. And worst of all, the human ship did not appear to fight aggressively. It moved to survive, but with elegance and calm that unsettled the aliens deeply. "Why does it not attack?" one officer asked Varkin. Varkin's mandibles twitched. "Because it is not just surviving, it is teaching us something." The human vessel sent another message. "Commander Varkin, your fleet is strong, but strength alone is not enough. To survive, you must adapt. We humans have learned this over countless years. Perhaps you may wish to observe." Varkin growled softly, anger mixing with something he could not name. Observation was one thing, but to be taught a lesson by a single human vessel, unthinkable. The Endurance moved closer, still non-aggressive. Grant used the moment to analyze the alien formation. Every ship that had attempted to engage the human vessel had been temporarily disabled or diverted. The Armada, undefeated for millennia, was beginning to fracture under the pressure of creative thinking rather than sheer power. And then came the first critical moment. A Karzun frigate miscalculated a turn, collided with a smaller destroyer, and spun helplessly. Communications were lost for nearly an hour. Varkin stared at the holoscreen, fury and disbelief mixing on his face. "It cannot be one ship." "Yes, Commander," said the officer quietly. "It is one ship, and it is controlling the battlefield without firing a weapon." The human crew worked in perfect synchronization. Every action, every movement, every adjustment in trajectory was deliberate. There was no panic, no hesitation. Humans were not only surviving, they were rewriting the rules of engagement. Grant spoke softly to his crew as if sharing a secret. "This is why humans endure," he said. "We are unpredictable, we adapt, we survive by thinking differently from our enemies, and now we will see how far that can take us." The Karzun fleet attempted a concentrated strike. Hundreds of fighters surged toward the Endurance, weapons blazing. Yet every move was anticipated. Every attack was diverted. The human ship maneuvered through the chaos as if dancing among the stars. Some fighters collided with each other. Others were trapped in gravitational eddies or debris fields. Not one human weapon had fired. Varkin's mandibles clicked sharply in frustration. "We cannot destroy it," he hissed. "Our tactics, our strength, it is useless." On the Endurance, Captain Grant allowed himself a small grin. This was not victory yet, but the message had been delivered. Humans fought differently. Humans survived differently, and the galaxy had never seen anything like them. As the Endurance drifted, calmly observing the floundering armada, Grant sent one final message before the human ship made its next move. "Commander Varkin, history teaches many lessons, but survival is not only about power. Observe us, and perhaps you will understand. The galaxy is changing. The humans are here to endure." Varkin stared at the holoscreen, his fury tempered by a strange, uncomfortable realization. For the first time in his life, the unstoppable Karzun armada had met something it could not predict, could not control, and could not easily destroy. And the human ship, it glided silently, confidently, surviving and teaching without even raising a weapon. The galaxy was about to learn that humans were not like other species. They were dangerous, not because they were the strongest, but because they could survive against all odds, and they never fought like anyone expected. The first real test had begun, and the Karzun would never forget the lesson they had learned from a single, unassuming human ship. The Karzun armada had never experienced confusion like this. Their fleet, organized and precise for millennia, now felt like a scattered collection of ships, each struggling to anticipate the moves of a single human vessel. Commander Varkin's claws clenched tighter than ever. "This is intolerable," he hissed. "One ship, one puny human ship, and yet it outmaneuvers us at every turn. Prepare a concentrated strike, target it with everything." "Commander," said the young officer nervously, "our attempts, they continue to fail. Every strike is anticipated. Every formation collapsed. Our losses are minimal, but the confusion spreads across the armada. Varkin's antennae twitched with frustration. For the first time, he felt the sting of fear, not the fear of death, but the fear of losing control. A concept foreign to a species that had conquered countless worlds. Across the stars, Captain Elias Grant observed the armada's increasing disorder. The human ship floated calmly, almost like a leaf drifting on a cosmic wind. The humans were not reckless, nor were they blindly brave. They were intelligent, adaptive, and deliberate. "Lieutenant Singh," Grant said softly, "prepare the next phase. It's time they see why humans endure." "Yes, Captain," she replied, fingers moving rapidly across her console. "Everything is ready." The human strategy did not rely on brute force. The Endurance did not fire upon the armada. It did not need to. Instead, the humans created small, controlled disruptions. Subtle pulses that interfered with targeting systems. Precise gravitational adjustments to force alien ships into awkward positions. And carefully placed drones to simulate multiple threats. The Karzun tried again to coordinate a strike. Hundreds of ships moved as one toward the human vessel, weapons blazing. But every attempt was met with a new obstacle. Ships became trapped in asteroid debris, weapons overheated, and formations collapsed under the subtle but precise influence of the human maneuvers. On the bridge of the Drolith, alarms screamed. Commander Varkin's mandibles clicked with a mixture of anger and disbelief. "Report," he demanded. "Our formations, they are failing, Commander. Every attempt to strike has been countered without any attack from the human," the officer said, voice tight. Varkin's antennae twitched sharply. "Impossible, they must have weapons." "There is no other explanation." "They have no weapons," another officer admitted hesitantly. "At least none that our sensors detect. Yet our fleet falters." Meanwhile, the human ship released another set of drones. These were small, almost invisible to Karzun sensors, but each carried specialized equipment designed to probe the alien fleet. Instead of attacking, they created minor malfunctions, forcing Karzun ships to adjust again and again, consuming precious energy and testing their systems. Grant watched it all with quiet satisfaction. "Humans do not rely on strength alone," he explained. "We adapt. We anticipate. We survive by thinking differently than the enemy expects." On the Drolith, Varkin felt a creeping realization. For the first time in his life, he faced a species that could survive against the overwhelming might of the Armada. The Endurance had not destroyed a single ship, yet the Armada's dominance was challenged. Varkin banged his claw against the console. "Prepare the flagship's weapons. Target the human directly. End this charade." But even as the Drolith unleashed its firepower, the human ship moved with precise timing, slipping between energy waves, using gravitational eddies and asteroid debris to evade destruction. Every strike from the flagship was ineffective. Not because the human technology was superior, but because the humans themselves were unpredictable, adaptive, and clever. Grant's voice came calmly over the ship's intercom. "We are not strong like you, Commander Varkin, but strength is not the only measure of survival. Humans endure because we learn, we adapt, we protect what matters." The Karzun flagship fired again, this time coordinating multiple volleys of energy at once. Yet the human ship moved through them like water around rocks. Drones created phantom signals, forcing some of the Armada's ships to misfire or collide with each other. "This is unacceptable," Varkin hissed. "How can one ship cause this much disorder?" A human message came across the channel. "Commander Varkin, your fleet is powerful. But your doctrine is rigid. You fight the way you always fight. Humans survive differently. We anticipate, we adapt, we endure, observe, and understand." Varkin's antennae twitched with growing unease. This was not just a tactical battle. This was a lesson, a revelation. The humans were demonstrating a philosophy that the Karzun had never encountered. That victory was not only about destruction, but also about survival, intelligence, and adaptability. On the Endurance, Grant's crew worked seamlessly together. Each maneuver was calculated, every adjustment precise. Humans were not just surviving, they were teaching the Armada what it meant to endure without aggression. Several Karzun ships attempted desperate boarding maneuvers, hoping to overwhelm the human vessel with numbers. But the Endurance avoided each one effortlessly, slipping through narrow gaps, twisting through asteroid fields, and using minimal thruster bursts to confound the enemy. Each failed attempt reinforced the lesson. Humans could survive against overwhelming odds through ingenuity and adaptation. Varkin felt a flicker of panic, a feeling unknown to him before. His fleet, once flawless, now struggled to maintain cohesion. Each failed strike, each collision, and each miscalculation gnawed at the confidence of the once unbeatable Armada. "Stand down," Varkin barked to his fleet. "Regroup, focus fire. Do not let one ship humiliate the Armada." But the human vessel continued to move unpredictably, weaving between gravitational fields and debris, never attacking, yet never surrendering. The humans' actions were deliberate, measured, and almost elegant. Grant sent one final message before the next maneuver. "Commander Varkin, humans are not the strongest species, but we survive where others fall. Observe us, and perhaps you will learn what it truly means to endure." The Karzun fleet paused for a moment, a brief hesitation, but in that pause the humans gained the advantage. Several ships became trapped in gravitational currents, while others collided in minor accidents, forced by subtle nudges from human drones. The Armada had not suffered major casualties, yet its order, its reputation, and its unchallenged dominance were shaken. Varkin's mandibles clicked sharply. For the first time, he questioned the nature of victory itself. Perhaps the humans had shown him something even more dangerous than weapons, the ability to survive against impossible odds and to teach a lesson through strategy and intelligence alone. The Endurance drifted silently, calmly observing the disarray it had created. The humans had not attacked, they had not destroyed. Yet in every action, in every carefully measured movement, the human crew had demonstrated a truth that the Armada could not ignore. Survival was not about strength alone, it was about adaptation, intelligence, and unity. On the bridge of the Drolith, Varkin's voice was low, almost reverent. "We have never faced an enemy like this, one that fights not to kill but to endure." Across the stars, Captain Grant allowed himself a brief smile. Humanity's message had been delivered. The Karzun had witnessed a force they could not crush through traditional means, a species that survived not by firepower, but by ingenuity, adaptation, and unwavering resolve. And the most unsettling truth for the Karzun was clear. One ship had challenged the Armada without firing a single weapon, yet had demonstrated that humans were not just survivors. They were a new kind of power in the galaxy. Varkin knew that the coming days would force the Armada to confront a reality they had never imagined. Humans were dangerous, not because they were the strongest, but because they were unpredictable, adaptable, and unyielding. The human ship continued to drift silently, unarmed but victorious in ways the Karzun had never seen. One small vessel had shaken the confidence of the galaxy's most feared fleet, and Captain Elias Grant knew the next step would be the most important yet. The humans were not just surviving, they were teaching, and the Armada would never forget the lesson. The Karzun Armada had been undefeated for millennia. Every enemy had fallen before them, planets conquered, fleets shattered, civilizations erased. Yet here they were, disoriented, frustrated, and for the first time uncertain. A single human ship had challenged their doctrine, their coordination, and their sense of invincibility. Commander Varkin paced the bridge of the Drolith, antennae twitching. Every system report showed minimal damage to the armada, yet chaos had taken hold. Ships misfired, formations faltered, and even the most experienced captains were unsure how to act. "This is unacceptable," Varkin hissed. "One ship, one human vessel, and our armada suffers. How?" A young officer spoke hesitantly. "Commander, they are not attacking, they are surviving. Their tactics are unpredictable. They anticipate us, adapt, and survive without engaging aggressively." Varkin's mandibles clicked sharply. For the first time, he faced a realization he could not dismiss. Humans were not just another species. They were something entirely new. Across the void, the Endurance drifted, calm as ever. Captain Elias Grant studied the Karzun fleet with careful attention. His crew moved efficiently, checking systems, monitoring the alien fleet's behavior, and making subtle adjustments to ensure maximum advantage. They did not need to fire a weapon. Their strength was in their unpredictability, their adaptability, and their unity. "Lieutenant Singh," Grant said quietly, "prepare for communication. It is time they understand why humans endure." "Yes, Captain," she replied, nodding. Her fingers danced across the console. A secure channel opened directly to the Drolith. Varkin's eyes narrowed at the human's message. "Commander Varkin," the human voice said calmly, "your fleet is powerful, precise, and disciplined, but your doctrine is rigid. You fight only the way you have always fought. We humans survive differently. Observe, learn, and perhaps reconsider what victory truly means." Varkin bared his mandibles in anger. "They dare lecture me, one ship lecturing the armada." "Yes, Commander," the young officer said quietly. "But it is true. They are teaching, not attacking. And our ships continue to falter against them." The human ship moved closer, maintaining a non-threatening course. The Endurance did not fire. It simply drifted, observing, calculating, and demonstrating the power of adaptation over brute force. Varkin decided to test them. "Deploy the orbital cannons," he ordered. "Level every structure in range. Destroy the human vessel once and for all." The weapons charged. Energy beams glowed, ready to annihilate the tiny ship. But the Endurance slipped effortlessly through gaps in the energy arcs, using gravitational shifts and subtle momentum adjustments. Each strike missed by a fraction of a meter. Each strike failed. "Impossible," Varkin hissed. "They evade without speed, without power. They anticipate everything." "Commander," the officer whispered, "their survival is deliberate. They are showing us something about strategy, about resilience." On the human ship, Captain Grant allowed himself a faint smile. "Humans endure by learning," he said softly. "We do not rely on the strongest weapon. We rely on observation, adaptation, and teamwork. And now, we will show them the final lesson." The Endurance released a network of small drones. They were minimal, almost invisible, but each carried specialized devices to subtly disrupt the Armada's internal systems. Navigation grids, targeting arrays, and even minor propulsion circuits. The effect was immediate. Ships hesitated, corrected course repeatedly, and some collided with one another in minor accidents. Chaos spread like wildfire. Varkin banged his clawed hand against the console. "Concentrate fire, destroy every drone, erase that ship." But every effort was anticipated. The human crew moved with perfect coordination. They evaded attacks, avoided collisions, and maintained complete awareness of the battlefield. They did not strike. They did not kill. Yet the Karzun fleet was being forced into retreat without any casualties, merely by skill, observation, and adaptive tactics. The Endurance transmitted another message. "Commander Varkin, humans survive because we understand the value of life, the power of adaptation, and the strength in unity. Victory is not destruction alone. It is the ability to endure, to protect, and to outthink our enemy. Observe, and you may learn." Varkin's antennae twitched violently. This was more than a tactical battle. It was a philosophical one, a confrontation of values. His fleet, the most feared in the galaxy, could not overcome this simple principle. Humans thrived by thinking differently. He realized then what the humans had been teaching all along. Brute force and rigid doctrine were not the only paths to survival. Strategy, intelligence, and adaptability could overturn even the most overwhelming power. "Signal a ceasefire," Varkin ordered slowly, his voice heavy with disbelief. We will withdraw." "Yes, Commander," the officer said, stunned. We have never seen this before. One ship, one human, and the Armada retreats." Across the void, the Endurance maintained its calm. The humans did not celebrate. They did not gloat. Their mission was complete. The Armada had seen firsthand the unique power of human ingenuity, resilience, and adaptability. The Karzun fleet began a careful withdrawal, leaving the tiny human vessel untouched. Even though no ships had been destroyed, the Armada had been forced to reconsider their assumptions. The galaxy had witnessed a new reality. Humans were not weak. They were dangerous not through raw strength but through unpredictable intelligence and unwavering unity. "Captain Grant," Myra Singh said quietly, "they have withdrawn. The Armada has never done this before." Grant nodded. "Yes, Lieutenant. But they have learned something valuable. One ship can change the galaxy, not through destruction, but through courage, intellect, and perseverance." As the Endurance charted a safe course through the corridor, Grant addressed his crew. "We have survived. But more importantly, we have taught a lesson. The galaxy will remember humans, not as weak newcomers, but as a species that survives against impossible odds and fights differently than any other." For the Karzun, the lesson would not be forgotten. Their fleet had faced a force they could not predict, could not dominate, and could not easily destroy. And that force was not even strong in the conventional sense. It was clever, adaptable, and unyielding. On the Drolith, Varkin recorded the encounter in the Armada's logs. He did not call it a defeat. That word did not exist in his lexicon. But he noted the truth. Humanity had shown the galaxy a new kind of power. Elsewhere, across distant star systems, other civilizations would soon hear of the encounter. The tale of the single human ship that had survived the Karzun Armada would spread, inspiring hope, caution, and admiration. Humans were no longer just one species among many. They were an example of endurance, strategy, and unity. And as the stars stretched endlessly before Captain Grant, he knew the journey was only beginning. Humanity had survived today. They had taught a lesson, but the galaxy was vast and countless challenges awaited. Yet one thing was certain: wherever humans went, they would endure. The Endurance moved quietly through the corridor, a small but unyielding presence in the vastness of space. One ship had changed the course of history without firing a single shot. One human crew had proven that survival was more than strength. It was intelligence, creativity, and unwavering courage. The galaxy would remember this day, and the Karzun Armada would never underestimate humanity again. For humans, victory was not in domination, it was in endurance. And with that truth, a new chapter of the galaxy's history had begun.